evening, ladies and gentlemen. We'll call this regular council meeting for Monday, February 13th, 2012 to order. I'll ask council to consider the adoption of the agenda. And the recommendation is that the agenda for the regular council meeting of February 13th, 2012 be adopted as circulated. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Garon. Mr. Burdecki, have you got any additions tonight?
No, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. I'll ask Council's consideration of minutes to be adopted. Tonight there's 3 sets of minutes. The first recommendation is that the minutes of the special council meeting of January 19th, 2012 be adopted. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Carlick-Pearson. Are there any errors or omissions? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. The question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. Next for adoption are the minutes of the regular council meeting of January 23rd, 2012. I'll ask Council's consideration. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Garon. Are there any errors or omissions? The question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are adopted. The third set of minutes for consideration are the minutes of the Committee of the Whole meeting of January 23rd, 2012, and the recommendation is that they be received. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Carlick-Pearson. Are there any errors or omissions? Hearing none, question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Those minutes are received. Next, under petitions and delegations, we have a presentation tonight concerning trade licenses, and it's brought to us by Mr. Frank Jabrovde. Did I say that right? Thank you very much. I've been working on it. I need to drag out the yes, please. And once you're ready there, if you press the grayish-green mic, everybody will be able to hear you, not only people in the room, but also the public who are watching at home on TV.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Most of you know me, and who doesn't know me, my name is Frank Zdravlje, and I represent tonight the anchoring. I've made sure that everybody of the council and the management got the email, this letter here, just to prep themselves. And in case somebody hasn't received it, I'll go through the whole thing. And
certainly, please go ahead.
Okay, dear Mayor and Council, I'm writing this letter in reference to the closure of Port Said Pub and Grill and our trade license with the City of Prince Rupert. Last year was an exceptionally low year in the hotel and service industry. After the poor 2011 return, we decided to close the pub and restaurant, low customer turnout, and high overhead of operations. Our last day was January 27, 2012. We did pay in full our trade licenses for restaurant, $245 for the restaurant and $1,210 for the pub. The trade licenses for the pub are significantly higher than for companies such as Frank Electric, around $155. The reason for the cost difference is related to policing of pub by RCMP. Since we are closed, I would like to see if the Prince Rupert municipality can amend our fees in a similar manner as the province of British Columbia does for our liquor license. I have attached the license schedule for food and beverage establishment. Their fee schedule is based on sale with the year, and within the year, and will be and the minimum charge is $250 for the establishment. I want to keep our liquor license as amenity to the hotel. Therefore, since we are closed, I would respectfully request the reduction of our trade license fees. And if we look on the second page, it shows in increments the way the liquor does. Like last year, this year our liquor license is $825 plus $100 for off sale. Last year and prior years we had around $1,100 the license, and it was depending on the sale. Like now we have got $825. That means that last year we purchased between $20,000 and $45,000 of liquor. liquor board knows how much we purchase it. And if there is a purchase of liquor less than $12,500, then the license comes only $240 because it's less policing, even for them to frequent the pub and so on, because that's costly for the liquor control board to frequent the pubs. So I don't want to repeat myself anymore. If it's possible to do something about it, because times are tough, and we all know it. And I know that if somebody comes in town and opens the business in August, they won't pay the full license. They'll pay just fraction or 6 months or whatever. And if I closed a month before, I should pay less. But, as said, I would like to keep the license because there are rules of the Liquor Control Board. It's all the rules and ties together. You'll get this, but you have to abide with all these rules. And the Liquor Control Board will give us a license at the minimum rate of $250 if we don't use it. It will be shown next year that we haven't purchased anything, and the license will be only $250. But in meantime, we have to keep the health license and the trade license. But if there is no business, I mean, there should be less charge.
Your request is understood. Let me see if there's any questions from members of council. There doesn't appear to be. Your request is well stated, though.
Thank you very much.
And
Your Worship.
The council will consider it.
Your Worship, I have a question.
Oh, our ghost councillor.
Sounds good. No, that's fine.
Councillor Thorkelson, please go ahead. I can imagine you sitting in your chair. We can hear you loud and clear.
Well, I've taken Councillor Carlick Pearson's tip from last meeting, and am looking at council on the internet, but I'm speaking over the telephone. So
how do we look?
pretty good, Jack.
Thank you.
So what I'm interested in is whether the presenter believes that we should be doing this with all business licenses. So, and what rules would he set if somebody is just closed down for a month, or for 2 months, or how do we do this so that everybody who goes on a holiday, closes down for a month, so they want a month off their business license? Like, what kind of rules would you suggest that we adopt for this?
Please go ahead.
Councillor Torkelson, thank you for asking the question. What it is at the age that I am and my wife, we have closed for good. If somebody, it's available to be rented or for lease, and if somebody is willing to lease, it's up to them to take the trade license. But for us, it's done. We are never going to open anymore. We kept it for years. We threw money from the hotel into the restaurant just to keep going. And last year it hit the rock bottom, and I don't think it's the end yet. And it's done for me.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thorkelson. Have you got any other questions?
No, I understand. I understand certainly the hotel's problems, and it'd be nice if we can fix them by having a booming economy. Probably won't happen within a year, though. But I was really quite interested if there's any suggestions on what we do with a business license in general, because we can't pass something specifically for one business. We'd have to have a look at it for all businesses, and I was sort of looking for guidelines.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Ashley.
Thank you for your presentation. I certainly do understand that business times are tough. I guess my question would be, I understand that the trade license goes from the beginning of January to the end of December. So I'm just wondering why the decision to close wasn't made earlier so you wouldn't be in this predicament?
Well, to tell you the truth, the girl that works in office told me, well, Frank, you shouldn't write the check. You just put post-dated check. I write checks. After the first week of the year, when all the numbers and bills set up, we saw that it was too much in the red, that we couldn't have continue putting my pension plan into somebody's wages.
Right.
You see, and the thing that I'm bringing it out, I mean, like Councillor Torkelson mentioned, that we should do with everybody the same. Yeah, well, the trade license is the trade license. It takes so much overhead for the city to control a trade license or a company. The liquor license, the trade license as part of the liquor establishment, it's different because we are paying extra $1,000 just about for policing, which it won't be there anymore. The cost won't be occurred. So, I want to pay the trade license, but at least that part of the policing, 800, 9,000, whatever it is, I would like to be reduced because it won't be there.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, thank you very much for coming down here this evening.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have a presentation from Mr. Bill Horn, the General Manager of Engineering and Public Works, and Mrs. Tanya Ostrom, the Assistant Operations Manager for the City of Prince Rupert, and this is regarding the cemetery adornment policy. Good evening. Thank you for coming down here this evening. Would you like to have the committee members with you there in case there's any questions of them?
Thank you, Your Worship, Council, City Council. Jack, I'm Your Worship, I'm Bill Horn, General Manager of Public Works, and with me here is Tanya Ostrom, Assistant Manager of Public Works. We're here today to present the Prince Rupert Cemetery Adornment Policy for your consideration. Tanya, we have been working with the Cemetery Advisory Committee for some time on an adornment policy or procedure that will help us maintain a cemetery in a clean and uncluttered, safe condition. However, at the same time, allow the mourners to adorn their past loved ones on loved ones' grave sites with adornments that are not hazardous and do not take away from the aesthetic values of the cemetery itself. We're all aware that the cemetery issues can be very sensitive. Therefore, we contacted various cemetery operations in British Columbia, including Cranbrook and Prince George, to see how they handle adornment policies and bylaws. We also contacted the BC Consumers Protection Branch, who regulates cemeteries in BC, for their input. In all our discussions with the various contacts, there were the same concerns: aesthetics and the safety of the public and the staff. After consultation and from the information gathered, it was determined the best thing to do was to implement a procedure that was clear for the public and staff. The Prince Rupert Cemetery is a huge maintenance task in just keeping the grass cut, let alone headstone maintenance. Without the help of the Cemetery Advisory Committee and groups that help with the fundraising for special projects and the headstone raising, a lot of the task would not likely be done. Cemetery maintenance in other communities is a far smaller task than our cemetery due to our climate and ground conditions. The moss, water, and muskeg makes maintenance a difficult job as well as time consuming. At the same time, the climate also takes a toll on the adornments placed on the grave sites. Wind and rain have the biggest effects on these items, which results in the adornments rapidly deteriorating or being scattered. Some of the inappropriate adornments, such as glass vases and figurines, get broken, leaving the potential for projectiles during grass cutting operations. The city bylaws are clear about the regulations on adornments that can be placed on the grave site. This policy and procedure is to be in conjunction with the bylaw to give a clear understanding to those who have loved ones buried at the cemetery on what can be placed on the grave site and what adornments are not acceptable. I'm going to get Tanya here to read the adornment policy for everyone.
So this is going to be a handout that would go with the public, anyone who comes in to inter their loved one. In order to maintain a neat appearance throughout the cemetery and operate in a safe and efficient manner, certain rules and regulations have been established for the care and removal of adornments in the Fairview Cemetery. An adornment placement and removal policy is necessary to make a clear statement of the intent of allowable adornments while respecting the grieving process of all visitors and to establish a framework for the priorities within which they are to be removed. Immediately following the funeral, floral arrangements, both fresh cut and artificial, with the plastic wrapping removed, may be placed at the interment location for up to 30 days after the burial. Out of consideration to those with recent deaths, items such as wreaths, tributes, stands, baskets, and pictures will be permitted on the gravesite for 1 week. Acceptable adornments. Flower placement. Only floral arrangements, both fresh cut and artificial, may be placed at the interment site throughout the year. Fresh cut floral arrangements are encouraged. Plastic wrapping must be removed prior to placing the bouquet. All floral arrangements must be placed in a non-breakable container and fastened securely to the plot to prevent the bouquet and containers from blowing around and causing a hazard. For loved ones in the columbarium, fresh cut or artificial flowers can only be placed in the flower vases which have been approved and are attached to the niche memorial nameplate. Special occasions. For those who wish to commemorate their loved ones for a special occasion, such as birthdays, holidays, anniversaries of death, they may place approved items on the grave site for 1 week. Prior to placing the items, the cemetery caretaker or staff must be notified and made aware of the special placements. This will prevent staff from removing the adornments during this period. Adornment removal. All floral arrangements will be removed from the interment site by cemetery staff when they become wilted, discolored, unsafe, and unsightly. Any items placed at the gravesite, including but not limited to ceramics, trees, urns, potted flower containers, landscaping materials, candles, fences, rocks, baskets, glass, or stands, will be removed from the gravesite as soon as they have been identified by the cemetery staff. Items attached to the columbarium niche facings, such as cards, photographs, wreaths, or other unapproved tributes, will be removed. Any items placed on the gravesite or the columbarium niche that contravenes the cemetery bylaw and has not been approved through the issuance of an engineering permit to construct a memorial structure will be removed by cemetery staff immediately without notice. The general manager or his designee will direct cemetery staff to remove adornments and other personal property from any plot or columbarium if it is determined that it is a detrimental to the operation or maintenance of the cemetery, constitutes a hazard to visitors, employees, or machinery, is unsightly and or appears abandoned, is inconsistent with the cemetery standards, or does not comply with the bylaw or cemetery rules. Structures or adornments placed on unkept grave sites will be removed when the cemetery caretaker or his designee determine that they are unsafe or unsightly. Neither the Cemetery Advisory Committee nor the City of Prince Rupert or any of their employees, contractors, or agents will be responsible for any adornments that have been damaged or removed. These guidelines have been established to protect the safety of the cemetery staff and visitors. Your cooperation and compliance is appreciated.
Excuse me. Sorry. If the council was to adopt this procedure, it will not be implemented until May 1st. Non-perishable items that have been removed from the gravesite will be labeled and kept by the cemetery caretaker for a period of 3 months in the event that they may want to be reclaimed. We believe this adornment policy is appropriate for our cemetery and is very similar to other cemeteries of the region as well as the province. I would personally like to thank the Cemetery Committee for their time and effort in assisting the city with getting the information to the community groups with respect to this policy. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much. Are there questions from members of council? Councillor Garon.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm just concerned about the 3-month period that they have to wait in order for you to, if you're collecting the items. Are you contacting people, or that's probably not possible, but I'm just wondering if people are aware of the policy and if you're removing items.
People will be aware of the policy. The information will be given out freely. If this policy is adopted by the council, the information will be given out freely, and it'll also be available on the city website and downstairs.
Well, I'm just wondering, not everybody pays attention, so I'm just wondering if 3 months is too short of a period, maybe 6 months is better. Just in consideration of people that might not live in town. I don't know the circumstances of everybody.
Right. You never know when you adorn a grave site and something is missing, whether in fact the wind has taken it away with the kind of weather we've been having, or whether or not the staff have picked it up. Mr. Horn.
I think that on any gravesite that we have to take the adornments off, we contact, if we can, the people who have the gravesite to tell them that the adornments they have on their site has been removed due to their being inappropriate, and we'll make every effort to contact them that we can. Some of the older ones, for people that have been there, the sites that are quite old, it's very difficult to get a hold of the next of kin, so to speak. So some of those we'll just take them and hold them for 3 months, and hopefully that someone will come along and ask about them.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from members of staff? Councillor Thorkelson.
I was just wondering if we could get some kind of a notice with the at the that didn't look too foreboding or forbidding at the gate of the cemetery with sort of a short version of this. Policy, I think the policy is good, and I want to thank staff very much for doing a great job in consulting. When this was brought before us earlier, I wasn't sure if anybody had been consulted in the, particularly in the different religious communities, and I think you've done an excellent job, and I want to thank staff for doing that. But, and that's the only thing that I could think of is maybe a small sign of some kind with a short form of this with a handout at the office if anybody's in the office.
Certainly, so giving as much notice as possible. Thank you very much for coming down here this evening, appearing before the council, and thank you to the cemetery committee members that participated in this and have taken the time to come down here this evening also.
Thank you, Your Worship.
We'll move on to reports and recommendations, and the first item there is a report again from the General Manager of Engineering and Public Works and the Assistant Operations Manager, and this is regarding the policy which was just reviewed for the council and public that are watching, and there's a recommendation that comes with this that council adopt the attached Fairview Cemetery adornment procedures. Councillor Ashley.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Councillor Guerin. Are there any comments regarding the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion is adopted. We'll move on next to the report from the Chief Financial Officer, and this is concerning trade or business license bylaw refunds, and there's a recommendation there that Council receive this report for information purposes. Mr. Roden, as the Chief Financial Officer, would you please outline your report?
Certainly, Your Worship. Some time ago, a local businessman asked for a partial refund of his liquor license. Staff listened to him and said no, they couldn't do it because they were constrained by the city bylaw that stipulated that there would be no refund for businesses that closed during a year. So he was advised that he could come to council and make an appeal to council. He has done that tonight. The bylaw is very explicit. It does say that there is no refunds. The legal implications of it is that it is a city bylaw. It's a law created by the city, so it sort of behooves the city to follow their own law. There's community charter restrictions that may or may not be applicable in that the municipalities are not allowed to provide a gift or a donation or some other entitlement to an operating business. And it's noted that council can amend the bylaw, but you don't amend bylaws on a retroactive basis, only on a prospective basis. So if council wished, they could give direction to staff to come back with an amendment to the bylaw that would allow more flexibility in the future, particularly perhaps for liquor licenses, given the size of the fee that's levied. We did do a little survey. It wasn't scientific. We started at the top, started working our way down. That's why we started with the first responses we got were C's, and then we got, so we didn't start with Ashcroft. And what we found of the 21 or 22 bylaws that we took a look at, Most of them, in fact only 2, allowed for any kind of a proration of fees after a business had opened and paid the fee for the year. So what we're doing in Prince Rupert is, from what we can determine from our sample, extremely consistent with what goes on throughout the rest of the municipal world in British Columbia. We thought about it a little bit. We decided that the reason why municipalities do it this way is there's a number. One reason, quite frankly, is just the administration of such a bylaw. If there was a proration, how would you deal with businesses that are seasonal? Businesses, as it was discussed earlier, what happens if the owner leaves for 6 months and then comes back? And so basically, I think there's that. There's the other piece that the businessman himself acknowledged, is that the liquor license bylaws are more expensive because it's generally accepted that there's more costs associated. The community incurs more costs, such as policing, and we certainly cannot adjust our costs when somebody decides to close. We can't ratchet down our costs immediately. We're stuck with them for at least a year. So the recommendation is that Council simply accept this report for information purposes and not accede to the businessman's request. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Giron and then Councillor Ashley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Question for staff then is, if for some reason we decided to refund him, you're saying that legally we are not allowed to do that?
The way it works, Councillor, is that if you're going to give a refund, you would have to amend the bylaw. And when you amend the bylaw, it only comes into force and effect after it's adopted for people who make application subsequent to the adoption of the bylaw. So you can't go back prior to the adoption and do a refund.
I'm just saying, if we did without amending the bylaw, legally we are not allowed to do that under the community charter.
Right, you couldn't do it that way either. You'd actually be going against your own bylaw. Councillor Ashley.
I move the recommendation.
Thank you. It's been moved. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Carlick-Pearson. Is there any discussion? Councillor Thorkelson, we can't see you, but do you have any comments?
I was just wondering, when we have a bylaw, do we have different fees? We have different fees and charges, correct? And it's all covered by one bylaw. Is that how it works? I just need to be refreshed.
Yes, that is how it works, and it's based on the type of business.
And so there's not separate. There's maybe separate fees and charges, but it all comes under the same bylaw.
That's correct. It's called a fees and charges bylaw.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Councillor Ashley?
Just with respect, I listened and I understand what Mr. Stravier was saying, but I happen to agree with a lot of the things that Mr. Roden was saying. I can't say his name properly. But he was indicating that, the province has things where they would lower the cost. And I guess I would want to bring up the point that the province has a lot more certainty in terms of money coming in, whereas we are a smaller operation and we have less money coming in, so we have to be a little bit more cautious to make sure that our money is even. I also think it's a little bit of a slippery slope, as was talked about. Does every business that closes then have the right to ask for refunds, and then how does that end up leaving us in terms of our financial ability to run the city? And I was unclear on this, but it sounded like he was, even though they're planning on closing the restaurant, that they're still planning to hold on to the liquor license. And if they're planning on holding on to the liquor license, I guess I would argue that policing issues would then potentially still exist if they ever were using the liquor license within their establishment. And I agree with Mr. Roden that costs for policing are already incurred by the time that the year starts. So for all of those reasons, as much as I appreciate the economic hardship, I'm not in favor of changing this.
Thank you. Other comments? Councillor Rice?
I just wanted to probably reiterate what Councillor Ashley has just stated, but I wanted to actually just demonstrate that I do have empathy for the financial constraints put on Mr. Zarafieh, but for the reasons that our financial officer has outlined, I cannot support changing the bylaw.
Thank you. Any other comments? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That report is received for information purposes. Next, there's a report from the Chief Financial Officer, and this is regarding Community Enhancement Grant Policy. Mr. Roden, would you please outline your report? I'll just tell Council that it comes with a recommendation that Council adopt by resolution the attached amended Community Enhancement Grant Policy. Mr. Roden.
Certainly, Your Worship. This is the second or third iteration of this report. It originally arose back in December. Council asked for some new language and made some suggestions. That came back to Council in January. The suggestions were added and approved. A number of other suggestions came up. They were added and approved, and at that meeting there was again a few more suggestions, and they have been incorporated this last time. The final suggestions are listed in the report as they've been highlighted in the actual copy of that's been attached. The amended the first recommendation was that the actual policies say that financial assistance needs to be demonstrated, and that the city has to have the financial capacity also to be able to give the money. A second amendment was that the organizations that wish to get a grant had to demonstrate that they were also trying to access other sources of funding, and that they simply just couldn't use the city as their first resource and their last resource. They had to go out there and do a bit. Another suggestion was threefold, that the applicant had in their application had to demonstrate that they promoted volunteers, they have minimal or no paid staff, and that they have other sources of financial support. And finally, that those groups requesting waivers of fees or other in-kind support, for example, if they're going to use our facilities, that they include in their application the number of people that they think are going to come to their event, the amount of admission fees that they are going to charge, if they are going to charge any, and finally, if they're not going to be charging an admission fee, why they were not. So, for example, if it was a community fundraiser, such as the Guns and Hoses that was on, I think that was a rock band. This last while, they did charge an admission, but the event was for local organizations, and hence it was the city was fine with waiving the fee. Whereas if someone wanted a waived fee and they were charging an admission and they were pocketing the fees themselves, then council would probably have a slightly different look at it. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions from Mr. Roden? Councillor Ashley.
I was just going to move the recommendation.
Certainly, please do. The recommendation's been moved, seconded by Councillor Guerin. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. The attached amended Community Enhancement Grant Policy has now been approved. Next is, I believe, the last report from the Chief Financial Officer tonight, and this is the proposed fire hall / RCM police building project process, and it comes with a recommendation that Council approves the proposed schedule of Committee of the Whole meeting dates for presentation regarding the fire hall, RCM police, public safety. It could be building or buildings. And there is a variety of dates over a 5-month period to enable all the information to be vetted in its entirety and certainly obtained by the public. Mr. Roden, would you please outline your report? And if you could, please outline the dates and the place and the time of those meetings so that as many people that are interested will be aware of when they could get this information.
Certainly, Your Worship. So I don't forget to do it, I'll outline the times and the dates right now. The proposed times are the February 27th, March 26th, April 23rd, May 28th, and June 25th. And the times would be at the Committee of the Whole meeting on regular council scheduled nights. So it would be one meeting each month for 5 months, regular council times. So if you're a watcher of the council meetings on a regular basis, then it would simply show up in the ordinary course of your TV viewing. This report arose from a request from council to try and give some shape to discussing the RCMP Fire Hall Public Safety Building, which I'm simply going to call the issue from now on. I'm not going to try and repeat all that again. To come up with this style of reporting out, a bit of analysis was done, and a couple of things were looked at is, why are we doing what we're doing, what communication channels are available to us, what's a reasonable timeline, how complex is the information that we're doing. There's a number of things. So basically it was decided that the outcome of the process is to try and get enough information first and foremost to council so that they can decide whether or not, in their opinion, it's a worthwhile endeavor to place the issue of building the issue in front of the community at large, and whether or not they should do it either by referendum or via the alternative approval process. So that's the first process outcome. The second process outcome is there's got to be enough information out there so that the community as a whole has all the information that they need so they can make a reasoned decision on whether or not they think it's a good idea. So there's the two groups of people that this process has to provide information to. When we looked at the various ways of communicating the information, over the last number of years, we've tried special meetings for various things. They haven't been particularly successful. I mean, there's been some people come out, and I think for those people that the meetings were probably quite worthwhile, but they didn't really reach a very large audience. Okay, so it was thought that the televised meetings, which it's my understanding anyways, they're actually quite well watched, would probably be the easiest way of getting a lot of information out there, because people could simply sit at home and get the information rather than feeling that they had to go to a certain point, a certain place at a certain time, find parking, get the babysitter in or whatever. Additionally, what we could do is there's quite a number of people in this town who do have computer access, even if they don't have their own computer, and so we can, by putting this, using the Committee of the Whole process, is all the information would be televised, and it would also be on video, so that if you missed a meeting and you wanted to go back and see what they said, you could simply go to a web browser and go and watch the meeting at your leisure. So you don't even, it was seen to be a very good way of setting it up so that even if people aren't going to be there on that particular night, they still have a chance to see everything that went on. And also, we could also provide information in a property tax stuffer. There's an expectation that the media may also want to cover it, and possibly do a half-pager or one-pager each month on what's been going on and what's been talked about and that sort of thing. So I think from a communication aspect, launching it through the Committee of the Whole process is actually quite good, and that doesn't preclude sometime in the future to have a forum of some sort where there was, say, a mass meeting at the Lester Center where hopefully you would get 300 or 400 people down there milling around and looking at diagrams and having a chance to really shake the idea around a little bit. And the other thing being is the as far as two-way communication, that people still can come to the Committee of the Whole meetings, and there is a point in the agenda where they can come forward and speak and ask questions. And we were also suggesting that on an experimental basis that we could actually have a bit of a phone-in where people could actually phone in questions or send us questions via email, and those questions could be answered publicly if we received them in time, and if they weren't received in time for one meeting, they could certainly be raised and answered in the subsequent meeting. The meeting content, it's a bit like a newspaper: who, what, where, when, and why, and how. And it was thought that it is a fairly complicated idea. There's a lot of money involved. There's two separate public safety services that we're talking about. They both have different needs. There's just a gamut of different things that need to be put out there in front of the public, and so it was decided that rather than trying to do it in one night or 2 nights, you might as well break it down and spend 5 or 10 minutes, whatever it took, every meeting, putting out some more information, and then at the same time let people ask questions to go over what had simply been talked about that night, or to bring up something from a previous night if they didn't understand it or they wanted to talk about it some more. So it's expected to be a very iterative process where you may go back to the same thing a number of times to make sure that people understand it. The timeline, again, the idea was that once a month would work well, because that's the Committee of the Whole meeting time. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there questions from members of council of Mr. Roden?
Your Worship?
Yes, Councillor Thorkelson, please go ahead.
Well, I think this is an absolutely superb idea. I like the various points of access, both by the internet, by coming and seeing it, coming to council, and the ability, because we store this on our website, the ability to access it after the meeting. I think that it's an excellent idea to do it over a number of months so that people can think about it, and then, as Mr. Roden has said, come back with questions that they thought they understood the point at the beginning, but now they're kind of wondering why later. And I think this is a superb process. I like the idea of experimenting with real-time phone-in and real-time email or access with questions. And I sort of see it as a Prince Rupert cross-country checkup, only it's cross-town checkup. I just think it's really a good idea to engage people this way. I have one suggestion, though, and I think that we could probably deal with it in point on the February 27th meeting. And it says, why are we considering this issue? And I thought that we need to have a discussion about other major infrastructure needs and the priority of those items in comparison with the safety building. Because, why are we looking at the safety building as the item that we may be trying to go to a referendum when we have things like Woodward Dam and in disrepair. You know, those kinds of questions. So I thought that would fit in with the February 27th, and there may be other questions that as we go along that we would see necessary to add to these meetings. But I think this is a really good, and I don't see it just for 10 minutes, but at least for half an hour at the beginning of every of those committee of the whole meetings. You know, I just think this is a superb idea. Thank you.
Thank you. So you're referring to the overall state of infrastructure in the city, remembering that out of the last 13 years, the first 10 years, the city got behind in infrastructure improvements and is actually $100 million behind in infrastructure, and that people in Prince Rupert have a 1 in 7 times greater chance of having the subdivision services fail in their neighborhoods than in any other community in Canada.
Well, I wasn't quite, Your Worship, thinking that we needed to be that down in the mouth, but I was thinking of having a look at other infrastructure needs. What are our other buildings look like, our building stocks? Are we going to have to go back to the borrowing well a number of times as these issues come up one by one? That kind of discussion.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carlick Pearson.
Yeah, I also I agree with Councillor Thorkelson about this topic as well, and I think we should actually designate a certain amount of time for community call-ins, because specifically when I ask people, you know, on the street about these two items, they're so unaware, and there's not enough knowledge out there. And when it was coming about with the proposed referendum, there wasn't enough information out there. So, you know, it's a great time for people to phone in, ask questions, and, you know, if we can answer them, or the two designated bodies to be able to answer them as well. So I would recommend that we do set a time aside for the community to call in.
If we're going to decide to do that, the council will decide that as a council. The procedure so far has been that people come before us to appear. These presentations are made during the committee of the whole meeting, so people would certainly be welcome to come down here, whether they're at home or not. If they hear something, because it is a committee of the whole meeting, come down here and ask their questions to the council. Councillor Ashley. Did you have a further comment, Councillor Carlick Pearson?
So, but there's a lot of people that don't have access to come down here on, you know, whether it's they don't have a ride or accessibility or whatever it is. People don't have rides or ways to get down here, you know, maybe on these proposed dates, and you know, their questions are valid, and I think that we should, and I believe Councillor Thorkelson is also has said that she's open to this as well. So I'm not exactly sure how we could do that.
We can facilitate it this way then. You could make a motion, which could be seconded, and we can get staff to look at a report as to how that request for phone-in could be facilitated here, and whether in fact we can do it and what the cost would be. You could make that motion if you'd like.
I'd like to make the motion that we designate whether it's 10 minutes or of dialogue from call-in, 5 or 10 minutes of dialogue from call-in and have questions answered.
Get a cost from staff and to see whether in fact they can facilitate it with the equipment here.
Exactly.
Right. Councillor Ashley.
Can I make a friendly amendment?
Certainly.
I do believe that what's being talked about is actually proposed in the report, but since we're putting it in the form of a motion, I would also like to see that we add the element of an email question. So if somebody wanted to email in a question, we could have somebody looking at that, and those could also be done in real time.
Certainly, if that's okay with the mover. Okay, thank you. So that motion's been moved and seconded so that people can be involved through possibly telephone or through the email process, and the staff would get a cost on that and to see how we could facilitate it during committee of the whole meetings.
excuse me?
Please go ahead.
I just I don't want to interrupt, but I can't see everybody's hands. The only concern I have with that motion is that was Councillor Carlick Pearson talking about 5 or 10 minutes, and I think that we should have those whole discussions for half. The council should put aside half an hour to 45 minutes, because I think if you really to do the whole thing, or maybe even an hour, if we really want to engage people, we'd have to do it in a meaningful manner. I remember the two exciting topics that really galvanized people to come down and address council were the gaming, was the gaming license and the gaming facility, and the licensing dogs and cats. And those are meetings where people came and talked to council and really felt engaged in council. And the councillors, I think, at least I felt, engaged with the community at that time, because you really knew how people felt. And I think that the first meeting might not be as long or as many people be engaged in it, but I think as the process goes along, that more and more people will want to express their opinions. And I think that 5 or 10 minutes is too short of a time. I think we really need to put aside some time and some much longer time in our minds, at least, for the process, and whether we fill up the whole time each meeting or not would be up to what happened at those meetings.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think this requires an awful lot of time to go through this, and I'm not happy to have this as the same night as a council meeting, because we have other issues we have to deal with during a council meeting. So could we move the committee of the whole to a separate night? It's just these are too complex of issues to deal with in 10 minutes or 15 minutes or an hour. I just can't see it hijacking a council meeting, or a council meeting hijacking this process. So I would really like to separate the nights that we have these from a council meeting.
First time I've heard that word in council meetings, hijacking. Let's get a comment from Mr. Howie first. Mr. Howie, your thoughts on where this is going?
Your Worship,
remembering that the city managers, how can I say this? Some people believe what makes a good city manager is the ability to think quickly and speak slowly. Mr. Howie.
Thank you, Your Worship, for reminding me of that. It's up to council. We can do whatever it is council wishes. The reason for this was that it's a well-established time. It's a time that's known by the community. We weren't, and that's the other reason for so many meetings, is to break it down into bite-sized pieces so that the information can be absorbed and that questions can be answered over a certain period of time. The reason I stuck my hand up a moment ago was really to get clarification on the motion, which was whether this phone-in and email deals specifically with this report or all committee of the whole meetings, because I heard a bit of both in the discussion.
We'll go back to the mover and the seconder. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, it was in specific to the fire hall and the RCMP.
We'll deal with this motion that's been moved and seconded as to whether or not staff would get a cost and see whether we have the apparatus or we're capable of handling phone-ins and emails during this discussion. So then we'll go on, after we get a motion either adopted or failed on that matter, we'll go on and discuss the rest of this. So is there any further discussion on that motion? Yes, please go ahead.
I'm just wondering, with regards, because in the motion we did have specific time, I'm wondering if the mover was willing to just take the time out and just leave it as call-ins and emails and let staff deal with it, but not saying a specific time unless you want to have a longer time. So,
We should first get a report on whether or not it's doable and what the costs are. I mean,
yes, I
certainly the
realize
time-
I'm just making, because in the motion originally it says 5 to 10 minutes, so I'm not sure
Right.
if we want to take that out.
Okay. Yes, please go ahead, Councillor Carlick-Pearson.
I just wouldn't want to leave it as a having no time on it, because these issues have been on the table for so long that we could probably stay here till 3-4 in the morning talking about this for 5-6 meetings and longer. So I think we have to be really specific to what the time frame is, if it's going to happen, if it's feasible. But another question that I had was to Mr. Howie is, or how is it that they're going to be presenting exactly? Is it a breakdown of who's going to be presenting on what days and how long they need for each presentation, and then if we could figure that out, we could figure out a time frame.
Yeah, well, let's take for example the first one. Why this issue is even there? We'd have a presentation on the issues around the police building, and a presentation around the issues with the fire building, and that would be that night. And the next meeting, okay, what are some of the things we can look at? What are some of the options around why do we want to build a new building versus fix the old one? That sort of thing. The next question, what needs to be addressed, that starts to get into things like the financing of the project, site location, and we just dive down. So it's not to take the issue of new fire and or police building and discuss the whole thing in one night. It's to try to break it down into very small, bite-sized chunks.
Councillor Carlick-Pearson.
So maybe if my seconder agrees here, we might have to revamp this. Just thinking that the first 3 or 4 information sessions for the community, and then maybe on June 25th we could assess or set a time that the community can call in then or email in then, so it's not a designated time every time. It seems somewhat convoluted, but we either have to have a short time that I feel, or a longer time on the last session. So,
Your Worship, if I may, the purpose of the phone-in and the email, just to make this thing more accessible to people, and to do that at every stage, so that if there are questions that come up, they're dealt with in the context of that particular meeting, and so by the time you get through the whole process, all of the, well, not all, but most of the questions and responses will have been given, rather than, because if you wait till the very end, then you've got just a flood of information and probably less opportunity for the public to have interacted with the program.
Councillor Ashley.
So I have a recommendation that I think will deal with this and then allow for the concerns that are being brought up.
Right.
If we take the time out of this particular motion, we can put forward a separate motion that indicates a maximum amount of time, perhaps, that we're going to set, or not a time for the. Sorry, Mr. Howie has something that he'd like to say there. So go ahead.
Mr. Howie.
Your Worship, I think I don't think you need to set either a minimum or a maximum. Frankly, I think you react to whatever the situation is on a given evening. If it would take, for example, you had a whole bunch of people decide, okay, I am going to stay home and phone in, then you want to accommodate those. If you've got a bunch of people in the gallery who want to speak, you want to accommodate that as well. And I don't see the dissemination of the information taking more than say 20 minutes in any given committee of the whole. Some of them will be a little more complicated, might take that much time. Some of them will take less, and then we can gauge, and then council can gauge from the comments whether we can deal with all of that in one night or whether we carry part of that discussion over to the next one, and still allow enough time to get the other council business accomplished.
Councillor Ashley.
No, that makes sense. I was just I was thinking of the fact that we had other stuff that would be happening on that night. So it wasn't with the intention, of course, of cutting people off, but more saying that, if you're phoning in, here's a time period, as opposed to, well, it's going to be open all night. But I certainly understand what Mr. Howie is saying. Okay. But I'm okay with taking the time out.
Councillor Carlick-Pearson, if it's pertaining to this motion.
It is. So I agree that we could change that and take the time out of there as well. But we also have to figure out that if there's going to be it needs to be in a question and not a comment. Like it's a question period, it's not a comment period. So however we go about throwing that into the motion.
Good luck.
You're looking at me like I'm crazy over here.
Yeah, good luck.
So if anybody wants to take a stab at
Mr. Grodecki, please strike the time from that motion. Okay.
Your Worship, is Joy.
Yes.
I'm going to be voting against this motion because, first of all, I'm glad the time limit is out, but we wanted to start this on February 27th, which is next meeting. And I don't think it's going to be cost prohibitive to set up Anson with the email sitting in front of a computer and looking at the email and setting up one or two phones in the conference room, particularly since I'm talking on one. So I can't see that the costs are going to be prohibitive, and I think that we should. If it's a big mess, it's a big mess. We can always change it. I think we should just try it for the 27th and see how people of Prince Rupert want to be engaged, because I believe that they do, and they're going to want to make questions and or make comments and ask questions. And I think that this is an exciting process. That I really encourage us to get involved in this. And I think some days it might be 20 minutes and nobody cares to ask a question. Another meeting, it might be 20 minutes and 45 minutes of questions. I think that I don't believe that it's going to be a major cost to look at email and a phone line, and I wouldn't want to prevent the February 27th meeting from having those give those abilities of public to respond to the reports besides coming down to council. And so I just think we should go ahead and the way this report is, try it out. And the only thing is that I did want that other item about other major infrastructure needs, which fits nicely under the topic on February 27th, so that we know why we're dealing with the public safety building and not Woodward Dam or something. So anyway, that's why I'm going to be voting against this. I think we should just adopt the report and go ahead and do it and see what happens. If it's a disaster, it won't be the first disasters council meeting I've been at.
You're right about one thing, Councillor Thorkelson. If it's a disaster, you'll know about it, especially if people think they can participate from home and that on short notice they can't. However, your comments are well stated. Thank you. Councillor Ashley.
I just wanted to clarify that the motion that is on the floor right now is, and Councillor Thorkelson, you're saying you're voting against the motion, but what you're saying, actually the motion, that is exactly what it's saying, is that there would be the ability to call in and email. That's what the motion is about.
Could somebody read the motion? I thought it was that we get the cost of emailing and getting
well,
the cost of emailing and setting up.
There is a cost component for it, but the motion does allow for it. But we wanted to find out the cost of doing it and whether we could actually facilitate it. And Anson's just taken your microphone away, not because we don't want you to talk. He's having some trouble with the batteries. Mr. Grodecki.
Your Worship, I'll read what I believe is the intent of the motion, and that Council designate a time at each of the Committee of the Whole meetings that are dealing specifically with the public service buildings, so that people can phone or email in their questions, and that staff can provide a cost estimate to see if our council can facilitate this community engagement.
Did you hear that, Councillor Thorkelson?
Yes, I just wondering how we're going to do that by the 27th.
Staff here work miracles. Mr. Howie.
Your Worship, off the top of my head, it's not going to cost all that much.
Okay.
This is also our emergency services headquarters, so I'm sure we've got a couple telephone lines we can drop, or we can advertise some cell phone numbers, and the email that's just having somebody monitor the email.
Okay. Did you hear that, Councillor Thorkelson?
Yes, and that's I agree with Mr. Howie, and so that's why I said I was going to vote against the motion. I agree with the rest of it. I just didn't want to hold things up because because the report back to council would be next meeting. Next meeting is the 27th, which means we wouldn't have anything in place for the 27th. So that was my problem with the motion.
Sure. Okay. Councillor Garon, Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Your Worship. Getting back, I know we're not talking about time, but are we allowing other issues to come up during the Committee of the Whole meeting after we're done with dealing with the RCMP safety building?
We haven't decided that yet.
Your Worship, we would still follow the procedural bylaw, which allows people to come to Committee of the Whole meeting.
Right. The rest of the other information, though, that I think you're alluding to is contained in the fact that this would be part of the Committee of the Whole meetings. This wouldn't be the only item in a Committee of the Whole meeting.
That's right, and I am very concerned that we're not. I don't want to mix this up with having a council meeting on the same night,
let's deal.
Because what happens is by 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, people are getting tired, and we don't do a proper job on the rest of the meeting because you're tired. You've been here for 4 or 5 hours and you're on overload, and I know I used the word hijack, but that's what I'm talking about. Is you lose steam, you get tired, you don't make proper decisions on the other items that are important. Both items are important, but I think this needs to be split up to a separate night. That's all I'm pushing for.
You can also mention that after we deal with this motion and we're dealing properly with the report. If you think it should be a different format than the 5 nights suggested at Committee of the Whole meetings, you can certainly speak to that when we deal with that report. Councillor Rice, speaking specifically to the motion, please.
Speaking specifically to the motion, I thought I clearly understood it, then I think I got confused with with Councillor Thorkelson's comments. And I just want clarification that the motion as it stands is that we are going forward with this regardless of the cost, but we're also getting a report on the costs, even though we're going forward. Is that how it currently stands?
That's correct. Thank you. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. Councillor Thorkelson?
Well, I think I'll go along with it.
All right. Thank you.
I'm not quite sure, but if it's how Councillor Rice just...
Yes, it is.
Then I'm voting in favor.
Thank you. Now we'll deal with the recommendation that Council approves the proposed schedule of Committee of the Whole meeting dates for presentations on the Fire Hall /RCM Police /Public Works building or buildings. If there's a mover and a seconder to this, we can discuss it. Councillor Carlick-Pearson. You move it? Thank you. Is there a seconder? Councillor Garon.
Can I make an amendment to the motion?
It hasn't been seconded. Would the mover like to withdraw? She withdraws. You can go ahead and you can make any motion you desire.
Well, I'll just start by saying that I move that these meetings be held on February 28th, March 27th, April 23rd, May 29th, and June 26th.
Is there a seconder to that? That doesn't go anywhere either. Councillor Ashley.
What I would move, if we're looking at, I do understand the difference of having it on a different date. So what I would actually recommend is having it on the alternate Mondays, if that's the case. So we have council meetings every second Monday or the second
Yes.
and fourth, so we could have them on the other Mondays,
On the
and that would
first and
allow
third Mondays of the month.
of the month. So maybe make it on the third Monday of those months.
Right.
If
Like-
that works for staff, so that would be my recommendation. That so we take.
Would
I
you
don't
like
know
to
what
make that a motion then?
I will make that a motion, but I'm not sure how that would affect
Okay, the
this
motion
month.
would read that the meetings be held concerning the public safety facilities, in this case the Public Works building, or a separate detachment or a separate fire hall, and they would be on the third Monday in the months of February, March, April, May, and June. I believe that's what you're referring to.
Yes, although I think I may need to make an amendment to that in terms of the very first one, because that would be next week, and that might be too soon for staff.
Mr. Howie?
And I'm wondering if maybe just for that one we leave it on the same night.
Let's find out. Mr. Howie?
Your worship, the other option is to do it on the 5th of March, because that's not a council meeting night either, and that would give plenty of time to get things organized. So I'd suggest March the 5th.
March the 5th, and then the third Monday subsequent.
The third Monday in April, in May, and in June?
And as well as in March.
So two meetings. Right, okay. So that's your motion. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Guerin. Is there any discussion? Councillor Thorkelson? Thank you. Councillor Rice?
I'm just curious, do we still have the option, or do we not have to discuss with City West about having it televised live? Because isn't that one of the key things?
We'll take care of that, Your Worship.
Councillor Ashley?
I just noticed one small problem in terms of people being here. March 19th is right in the middle of spring break, so there could be lots of people away on vacation.
It's not a problem for me. Is it a problem for anybody else?
I'm talking about people that are in the community, not myself. That people taking their kids away.
I wasn't referring to you. But,
well, it's also, I'm a school teacher, so it is my break too, but that's not why I was bringing it up. There are lots of parents that take their kids away during that time.
I see. Maybe that's why we're having 5 meetings. You can always catch up. You can get it on Skype, can't you? Online, there you go. Councillor Guerin and then Councillor Rice.
My comment was we do stream this live, and people do have the ability to email in or phone in, so they can watch online no matter where they are in the world.
Councillor Rice.
I just wanted to say that I'm definitely an extrovert, so I have to often work things out loud, and I don't necessarily want to be held to the comments that come out of my mouth as my firm opinion. So I am thinking out loud in this situation, and the reason we're coming up with these new dates is the concern that we'll be drained because council with the committee of the whole might drag on later into the evening. But I'm thinking about the fact that if the people that phoned in had actually showed up and sat in the gallery and presented, would we limit our council meetings? Would we shorten them? Would we cut them off? Would we say, we should reschedule? And my answer is no, we wouldn't. And while it is only 8:13 and I'm already bagged during this council meeting and I may be eating my words, I do think that we should continue as planned. And if the night does drag on and we all agree to continue on later into the night, that's actually a good thing. It might be inconvenient, but this is what we signed up for. This is why we're here. We're here to serve the people. And if the people are engaging by a different method, then we still need to be here and we still need to be awake and alert no matter how tired we are.
Yes, Councillor Thorkelson. Can I ask you to wait till Councillor Guerin provides her comment?
Absolutely.
Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you know, during some of the workshops that we had, I made some of the meetings go a good half hour longer than they were supposed to because I had so many questions about what we were looking at. So I'm just, Councillor Rice, this is a very expensive proposition we're looking at, up to $20 million that we're spending, and I would like to give it its full attention, and it deserves our full attention. So that's why I'm proposing that the dates be changed.
Councillor Thorkelson and then Councillor Ashley.
I think it's a better idea to have it on another night than council night for all the reasons that Councillor Grant has expressed. I was just looking at my calendar. If we did it for the first Monday of the month instead of the third, then we will avoid all kinds of things. And so maybe we should just do it for the first Monday of the month, and then we'll avoid spring break and it probably, it might work better for everything. So I just wanted to suggest that, that's all. I hate the scheduling business, but it's better for me if it's the first Monday of the month.
Well, there's a motion on the table. We hear your comments, though. The mover and the seconder could certainly change the motion if they like, or you could vote against it. Councillor Ashley.
I'm okay with that if the seconder is okay with that. And then I have a comment.
So the meetings would be the third Monday.
First Monday.
Pardon me, first Monday of every month for March, April, May, and June.
We're still going to need to have two.
So when would you like to have the
second
fifth meeting, or what you're calling the second one, which will be a total of 5?
Okay, second here. March 5th.
Councillor Rice.
Could we not do what Councillor Ashley suggested initially, as we possibly overextend ourselves on the next meeting, and then we go forward with the rest of the meetings on the first Monday of the month? So we are taking a chance and doing a big experiment, but it sort of maintains the flow and doesn't lengthen into summer.
Councillor Ashley.
I'm just looking at the dates. I'm trying to figure out where it would be good to have a second
Mr. Howie,
one.
perhaps you could help the council out.
That would be great. I thought I had it figured out.
Your Worship, there are a couple other options. The first Monday of the month works, and then you could just have the last one at the end of June, on the 25th of June.
That works with me.
Councillor Thorkelson, the talk now is to have these meetings the first Monday of each month, and then when you get into June, to have the last meeting on the 25th of June.
That sounds very good to me.
Okay.
Is that the motion now?
Yeah.
Moved by?
That's moved by me.
Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Garon. You've got the dates?
I have one last comment on this issue.
Please go ahead.
Thank you. It'll be short. There was some concern about moving these two different dates because of time and wanting to make sure that that we wouldn't cut off people if other things were going on. But I just wanted to point out that while I understand the idea of serving the public and engaging them, if we're too tired to think about things clearly, or we try to rush through things because we have too much on one night, that can also be a disservice. So just a balance.
Thank you. Call for the question on the motion. Question's been called. Those in favor. Councillor Thorkelson, you there?
I am, and I'm in favor.
Thank you. Next is a report from the Corporate Administrator concerning the residents at 1401 8th Avenue East. Advance notice is good. Thank you. Please go ahead.
Well, I'm glad we've got the times and everything. I also have some concerns because when this got brought up before and we didn't take it to referendum, there were specific reasons why, and they had to do with having the right information and all of the relevant information. And I just want to make sure that the information that we're getting consists of all of the things and all of the options that we would like to see. And I would like to just put forward some of those things just so staff knows.
Are they contained in the report, or are they in addition to the report?
I'm not sure what you mean. Like, are you...
What you're now going to put forward, is it already in the report? Is there something you want to emphasize, or are these, or what you're going to suggest, are they in addition to?
They are related to what's in there. However, they are more specific.
Please go ahead.
And when I say concern about the relevant information, in the report, it focuses in on the one thing. Do we build new buildings or do we not? And for me, one of the big issues has been, is that the only option, and have we looked at the cost-benefit analysis of other options? For example, with the RCMP, we know that there's a contract that says there's certain things that they have to do. But does that mean we need to build a new building? Have we looked, and these are some of the things that I think we really need to have some information on. Have we looked into things like leasing to own? Looking at somebody else building it for us and leasing it? Have we looked into possibly public-private partnerships? Have we looked into what it would, like, have we actually, I haven't seen the contract. I want to know exactly what it is that's required, because the things that are being presented, and this is not a dig at staff at all, but I want to make sure that when we're spending that much money, that we're only spending what we need to. We know we're not on a champagne budget, as Councillor Thorkelson always she uses all the time. We know that people generally cannot afford a 10 to 12% increase in their taxes. And so not only do we need to present them with the information about, why all these things are needed, we need to present them with, here's what happens if we do this, this is how much this costs, and here's the repercussions if we don't do this. They need to know all of that. And I want to see those things. And I think that needs to be part of this discussion. And maybe part of the discussion will be questions that people ask, well, how come we're doing this? Because I can tell you right now, when we have the meetings, people are going to say, how come we're building a new building instead of doing this? And I would like to have that information. So I want to look at those different things.
Those comparisons will be in
those comparisons, yes.
What else would you like?
Well, that's the big one. I just want to make sure that that information is in there, because I know that when we were looking at this before, the only options we had were, okay, here are some places that it possibly could be built, and we're going to be building. And I know that there might be good reasons why we want to build a whole new one, and I'm not saying that. But I think if we really want to make sure that the public understands that, we have to show them all of the different options so that they can choose for themselves.
Is there anything else that you would like added? Okay. Councillor Rice.
If those specifics were put forward in a motion, I would second that motion.
I don't think that's necessary. I think staff have heard the conversation. Thank you. Mr. Grodecki, would you please deal with item E? I note that it's your report.
Yes, Your Worship. The report is, the recommendation is that the property located at 1401 8th Avenue East and legally described as Lot M, Block 31, Section 7, Range 5, Plan Number 1899, District Lot 251, Land District 14, Neighborhood Code 247, and the property identifier number 012-618-781 be declared a nuisance under Section 74 of the Community Charter, and that the owners, Wolvery and Ian Hermanson, be notified and required to clean up the property within 30 days, and that for the purposes of this resolution, cleanup shall mean to either remove or cause to be removed all debris, vehicles, vehicle parts, boats, boat parts, collapsed fences, tarps, temporary structures, furniture, and all other miscellaneous refuse from the property on all sides of the building. Your Worship, the reason for the report is since April 2010, we've received at least 3 complaints about the property, and we've attached pictures to the back to give people a sense of it. And over the past year and a half, bylaw has interacted with the tenants and the owners of the property in order to try and get it cleaned up, and a ticket has been issued. Attempts to secure the cooperation of the property owners and tenant have not been successful to date. The next reasonable step to take in efforts to have the property cleaned up is to provide notice that the property owner has 30 days to remove the accumulation of debris, or the city will, in a reasonable manner and at reasonable times, enter onto the property and effect the removal of the debris and temporary structures at the expense of the person who has failed to comply. the property owners are delinquent in respect to taxes. There's a typo there. It should read 2010 and 2011. And if nothing changes, this property is headed for tax sale in September of 2012. The conclusion is that Council declare the property at 1401 8th Avenue East a nuisance under Section 74 of the Community Charter, and the owner be notified that they have 30 days to clean up the property.
Thank you very much. Pictures are attached to the agendas. I'll ask Council how they wish to deal with the matter. Councillor Ashley?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Guerin. Is there any discussion, any questions of staff? Councillor Guerin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Do we have a policy on how long we wait till this kind of stuff comes to council? Like I noticed the letter was dated in 2010, asking them to clean up, and he was fined then. Like how is there a procedure or a policy on how many times a person gets away with this before it comes to council?
Mr. Howie?
Your Worship, we actually don't have strict time guidelines, and part of the reason for that is every case tends to be a little different. But we could take another look at the bylaw and see if we should put those in so that the same, as best as we can, the same rules would apply to everybody.
Thank you. Councillor Guerin.
I know whenever these come up, some have gone on for years and some not so long, but I think if staff had some kind of policy to work with as a tool, that it would be less work for them to keep going back. So I would like us to, if staff would come up with some recommendations for some policies for us, I would appreciate that.
Certainly. Mr. Howie?
Yeah, we'll take a look at that, Your Worship.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for the question. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion is adopted. We'll move down to item 8A. There's a proclamation request from the Heart and Stroke Foundation. The recommendation is that February 2012 be declared Heart Month in the City of Prince Rupert. Mr. Howie, is there anything further with regard to that proclamation that needs to be expounded upon?
No, Your Worship.
Thank you. I'll ask Council's consideration of the recommendation. Councillor Guerin.
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Carlick Pearson. Is there any discussion? Councillor Rice.
I'm just curious, as a new council member, what do these proclamations mean? Because I feel like there's a proclamation of the week, and what are we really doing when we vote in these things?
When you're voting on these, and if the vote is in the affirmative, you're actually declaring a particular period of time and giving some emphasis, some exposure to a particular topic. In this case, it's Heart Month in February of 2012. You're welcome. So, question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion is adopted. Resolutions from closed meetings. Mr. Howie, would you please look after that?
I find my minutes, Your Worship. But just to quickly summarize, there were two items released. One, that the entire Prince Rupert Airport Authority be reappointed until April 30th, 2012, and staff will be advertising for volunteers for that and for other various board positions. Matter of fact, the ads are already out on those. And secondly, Council appointed Ms. Kathy Bedard and Mr. Ed McCarter to the Medical Facilities and Equipment Committee.
Thank you very much. Mr. Howie, the next item on your is your report on outstanding council initiatives.
Just briefly, Your Worship, the written report again will be on the next council meeting agenda as usual. Just a couple of things. We are putting together some information. We'll be reporting back to council and council's desire around looking at taking a look at social services and cracks or duplication therein, and meeting with various groups. So we'll be back to council with a report on that. The council's holding a strategic planning session later this month, and also there was a resolution the last council meeting to put a questionnaire out with the utility bills. That probably will be done later in the year, probably in March, which would allow us time to make sure we've got a good document to send out to the public. That would probably be done by mail drop and be available online for people to fill out. So we'll be reporting back to council on that and look to doing that sort of survey in March, which is still sufficient time to consider the results, if council wishes to, in the 2012 budget process.
Thank you. Next, we'll move on to reports, questions, and inquiries from members of council. Councillor Ashley.
I actually had a couple of questions for Mr. Howie first, but that's fine.
Well, please go right ahead. You can do it under this
Yeah, that's
section.
fine. Yeah. One that I was wondering about, and I know that it's supposed to be coming with regard to the curbside recycling, and you're looking into that. And I'm just wondering, I know that there was indications that you guys have been talking to the regional district, and I was just a little concerned. I'm wondering you're talking to, because when I mentioned, because I was going to bring some stuff up in budget discussions at the regional district, and when I talked to the CAO there, she seemed to not know, so I'm wondering who's been talking to who. That's all.
Your Worship, on that subject, we'll be doing a presentation to council at the next council meeting at Council Garon's request to look at not just the landfill operation but also at recycling. And I imagine any discussions that have taken place so far have probably taken place at the recycle to utilities department level rather than administration.
Please go ahead.
A second question, and I did email staff as well as the rest of council. I've had, for probably the past year and a bit, I've had a person complaining about a hedge that is in violation of a bylaw. So I'm just wondering if I can get an update on that, exactly what's happening. I said that I would ask.
Your Worship, we've just communicated with the individual. Mr. Horn sent a letter. We did take some action on that particular thing about a year and a half ago, and there are a couple issues there. I don't know that either of them are going to have to come back to council.
Councillor Ashley, go ahead.
And then I've got some questions, but I'll wait for later. But I wanted to just give an update on some of the stuff that's been happening at the regional district. We've been starting to go through the budget. Currently in the proposed budget, there's a proposed $50,000 increase to the requisition from the City of Prince Rupert. So we will be pushing for that to be zero, but just so that people are aware. And there's been questions over the past half a year or so about recycling depot and the hours, and I just wanted to make people aware that there should be a report forthcoming on what's happening there in terms of the impact that the reduced hours have had on volume and other issues. And it looks like they have a potential permanent solution in the works in terms of buying some sort of machine that would allow for drop-off at times when people aren't working. So things are looking good there. I made an inquiry into some things with regards to the Vancouver Island Library and why it was a partner with the libraries on the islands, just because I thought it was a worthwhile question to ask, and was informed that there had been attempts to partner with the City of Prince Rupert before, but because of the expertise that the Islands Library had, they had better infrastructure to deal with smaller remote libraries, and it was not cost efficient to use the Prince Rupert Library. The last point that I wanted to bring up with regards to the regional district, and I'm looking for direction from the rest of council here. There is an upcoming motion. It's been tabled for this Friday's meeting. There is a push to have a stance at the regional district on tanker traffic. And the tabled motion is as follows in terms of wording, and it may change, was that the SQCRD oppose any increase of VLCC, which is very large, perhaps Councillor Rice could help me on this one.
Very large crude carriers.
So very large crude carrier traffic along the west coast of BC. There was a lot of discussion at the table with regards to how specific it needed to be, and questions about exactly what this meant, especially coming from our side in terms of us being a port facility and not sure whether or not we wanted to have something that was really vague, and also the issue that as a council we have not taken a stance on something like Enbridge. We have chosen to instead explain the importance of our marine environment and all of the things that are important to us. And seeing that Councillor Kinney and myself are representing council on the regional district, I wanted to get some feelings as to how people felt, because since we're representing you, I would rather represent what council feels as opposed to my own personal feelings. So I'm just looking for some feedback. It could change, because right now there was original wording that was very specific against tanker traffic in total, and then it got specific to this. And my big problem was twofold. One, I wasn't sure exactly what the motion was saying, not being very familiar with what exactly very large crude containers are. And two, just not wanting to have something that was really vague, because you don't know how that's going to impact in future. So I'm just opening it up to ask for comments.
Certainly, I understand the first motion that was made really wasn't practical, because there is fuel either being carried by ships in 45-gallon drums or in larger containers, and of course some of that fuel is bound for Haida Gwaii, where all the electricity is produced by diesel-generated equipment. So to ban all vessels certainly wouldn't be practical, and would actually create a hardship in some of the communities on the islands and in some of the other outports. This other motion, I see it as being different from the Douglas Channel considerations. This other motion, first of all, is more of a wish. It's not enforceable. The regional district's area does not exceed out into the waters, particularly on the west side of the Haida Gwaii area. And the reality is that there are very large oil carriers coming out of the Prudhoe Bay area, coming out of the Cook Inlet area, and proceeding down the coast. So at the very most, if a motion is adopted at the Skeena Queen Charlotte Regional District, it's a preference. It's not in fact law. In fact, some people would argue that if it ever went to a court of law, it would be considered ultra vires, because it's outside of the jurisdiction of local governments in British Columbia. However, I understand the shipping of oil on the water creates a concern. Councillor Rice or Councillor Garon? I'm not sure if fingers are pointing all over the place. Yeah, I've got... If people think I'm stargazing when a councillor's talking, I'm looking up in the air. I'm actually looking at a couple of mirrors here so that I can keep track of the councillors. Although they'll be painting their fingernails soon, so I get a better view. Councillor Rice.
I guess I'll make a few comments on the new resolution as proposed, which may change, is that the Skeena Queen Charlotte Regional District oppose very large crude... sorry, how about I'll start with, could you reiterate that for me again?
The tabled motion was that the SQCRD oppose any increase of VLCC traffic along the west coast of BC.
So, if I could, just for clarification.
Sorry, I've got it on my email here, so
okay,
I will
go ahead.
read it exactly. So, okay, that the regional district, I was summarizing before, but the regional district is not in support of increased that they changed it. The regional district opposes very large crude carriers in northern waters as the risk to residents is too great. That is the exact wording.
So it's nothing to do specifically with one route as opposed to another, whether it's out of Prudhoe Bay or out of Douglas Channel?
No, it just says in northern waters as the risk to residents is too great.
Right. There was a motion put forward before they changed the name to Haida Gwaii. There was a motion put forward at a UBCM annual conference. I think it was 2 years ago. Perhaps it was 3 years ago. Right. And did anything happen as a result?
To my recollection, I remember it passing, but I don't think anything happened with it beyond that.
Right. Thank you. Councillor Rice.
Nothing has happened with that because there actually haven't been tankers to come. So it was approved, and so as far as I'm concerned, it's been abided by because there haven't been tankers. I just wanted to explain that a VLCC is a very large crude carrier, which is the largest super tanker oil container ships that we have. There's all kinds of different sizes, but these are the largest. And if you stand a VLCC on end, it stands taller than the Eiffel Tower, so if that gives you a perspective on the size. And not enshrined in legislation, but there is an agreement that those Alaskan oil tankers that you're speaking of actually do take a pretty wide berth off the coast of British Columbia, and they do not travel in inside waters. They stay about 200 nautical miles off the coast of Haida Gwaii. And there is currently a proposal on the table by Enbridge to actually have VLCCs, or actually other tankers, smaller tankers as well, not abide by that so-called unenforced or unenforceable rule.
The 200-mile limit.
The 200-mile limit. So that would actually, how it would be is that Enbridge's proposal would allow tankers in inside waters, but Alaskans would have to stay offshore. And the reason that legislation that was never formally legislated came into effect 38 years ago now was after the Exxon Valdez oil spill. So it was came into effect in order to protect the coast of British Columbia.
Do you know, just while we're on the topic, the very large vessels that carry oil, how many deadweight tons there? Yes?
We just had this discussion. Microphone.
333 meters long, 56 meters wide. The depth is 32 meters. The weight is 301,860 tons. Speed fully loaded 22 kilometers per hour.
And the deadweight tonnage again?
301,860 tons.
Thank you.
Joy here.
Yes.
It's it's a no-brainer for me, and probably if you took a vote in Prince Rupert about which way I was going to vote, 99.9% of the people would get it correct. I would advise Councillor Ashley that I support this resolution. I don't think there should be even medium-sized crude carriers in northern waters. So I'm certainly in support of this resolution, and I am going to move that the City of Prince Rupert support or direct Councillors Ashley and Kinney to vote in favor of this resolution.
Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Rice. So you've all heard. Could you repeat that, Joy, for the recording secretary, please? Are you still there, Joy?
Oh, sorry. Prince Rupert City Council having a problem with the mute button. I got so excited. Prince Rupert City Council direct councillors Ashley and Kinney or their alternates to vote in favor of this resolution.
Thank you. Councillor Giron. That's been seconded by...
Councillor Ashley, could you read the recommendation again?
You mean the motion? So the motion is that the regional district opposes very large crude carriers in northern waters as the risk to residents is too great. Just a question.
And if I could, for the recording secretary, the motion was moved by Councillor Thorkelson and seconded by Councillor Rice. Thank you. Go ahead, please, Councillor Ashley.
My question is, and I don't have any problem with how the direction goes, because that's why I asked.
Certainly.
But should the wording change? Should we just take the intent? Basically, I mean, I think we can take the intent and just go with that as in terms of voting. Is that the intention of the motion?
That's my intention, Councillor Ashley.
Thank you.
Councillor Rice.
I think the motion is in line with our values as the City of Prince Rupert, and it complements the evidence that we submitted in the joint review panels for the Enbridge Northern Gateway pipelines and tanker project.
Are you referring to the City of Prince Rupert statement?
I'm referring to our statement of how valuable the marine environment is to our economy, culture, livelihoods, our social well-being.
Thank you. There's been a motion which has been moved and seconded. Is there any comment? Question's been called. Those in favor? Those opposed? Councillor Thorkelson?
I'm voting in favor.
Okay, just wanted to check in case you change your mind.
Not likely.
The motion passes. Are there any more reports, questions, and inquiries from members of council? Councillor Ashley.
I seem to be monopolizing. My next question, though, is about community forum, which is set for March 12th and 13th.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, because we got a letter from the regional district saying that they were wanting confirmation of attendance, and I'm just wondering if staff was looking for numbers today or if by next meeting is good. I don't know.
You can speak up now if you like, certainly.
Yeah, it's we've already told them that we'll be there. We're just not sure the exact numbers, so we're good. We'll check with you when we get closer to the date.
Sure. Yes, go ahead, please, Councillor Ashley.
My last thing, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but I have drafted a couple of resolutions that I will send out to staff and to the rest of council to deal with at the next meeting. So I just wanted to let you guys know it's in relation to the idea of tanker traffic, but it has to do with specifically looking at the liabilities and how when you have different groups that have products that go onto ships, when it goes onto the ship, the people that have the product seem to lose liability in terms of the product. So there was one that's related to that at the same point is talking about the fact that the Coast Guard keeps cutting back in terms of safety measures and that we need to have more help with that. And then the other particular motion has to do more with rural and small urban communities having less and less ability to pay for emergency services and looking for more funding sources to help us out with things like fire, policing, and all of those types of things.
So are you putting these forward to the council in support of the regional district communities? So you say the rural and the smaller communities?
Well, I consider us a small urban community, so it is in support of the rural and the small ones, but it's also in support of areas like this.
Okay. Any of these three motions that you're going to put forward, do they require any research to be done by our staff?
I don't think so, but it might be helpful.
It might be better if you submit them sooner rather than later, because
I can email them right away.
Yeah, then as soon as they get them, if something is required, they can get all the answers for the council before the council deliberates your motions.
Okay, I will send those.
Thank you. Councillor Guérin.
Thank you, Your Worship. In our info packages, there was the FCM annual conference and trade show. I don't know if we've missed the deadline or not, but is there any advantage to attending that?
If you're asking myself, I've never seen an advantage to attending the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. I've always found that the larger communities, be it Toronto, Winnipeg, Calgary, communities of that size, Vancouver included, really led the way there. A community of 12,000 people didn't have that much input or that much impact. However, in the past, sometimes when representatives went to that, they used it as an opportunity, if they could, to talk to somebody from Ottawa. You never know who's going to be there from Ottawa and whether or not you can, in fact, get an appointment. There's a lot of communities in Canada that go. I'm never quite sure whether there's much success to be obtained from going.
Well, we just seem to be on the map. People in Canada seem to be hearing about us, so I'm just wondering if anybody wanted to go to it, but
yeah.
I don't really know what goes on at it. So.
Yeah. Mr. Howe, have you got anything to add to that?
No, Your Worship. The FCM is focused towards local government, but just like the UBCM is targets the provincial government, because that's the legislation we exist under, the FCM tends to deal more with federal ministers and the federal government. They spend a considerable amount of time in the past few years dealing with infrastructure. They take part in distribution of grants or make recommendations to the federal government on grant distribution. The conference itself is 3 days, and much like the UBCM, it's a combination of educational opportunities and policy setting opportunities. So there are resolutions put to the floor, again mostly aimed at the federal government, and it is a higher level of discussion is not quite the right word, but it's a different level of discussion. The large municipalities do take a higher profile role. As you say, UBCM, you go and you can make appointments in advance, and you can utilize time to good effect meeting with various ministers. At the FCM, there may be a few federal ministers there, but I don't know that they have any other than phoning their offices in advance and asking if you can meet with them. They don't have sort of the same registration desk system that UBCM has.
Thank you. Councillor Guérin.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just on that, I'm just wondering if there's any other companies or businesses such as the port in the community that maybe wanted some of this information if they wanted to attend the trade show, just to put a profile on us. I'm just putting information out there.
Certainly, we could send that out. I'm not sure if they would go. Are there any other reports, questions, inquiries?
I have one.
Please go ahead.
It's with regard to resolutions to the local government, the North Central Local Government Association.
Yes.
And I want just to let people know that I intend to put the resolution forward on, it's in the February 1st info package, and it's regarding CETA, and it resolves that CETA is the TILMA agreement, or local supply agreement with Europe, so almost like a free trade agreement with Europe. And this requests basically that the British Columbia government has been in discussions with the federal government, and it requests that the provincial government talk to the UBCM and let them know what the provincial government is doing, and also calls upon the provincial government to protect the procurement services and invest parts of the CETA discussions so that we aren't impacted negatively by the CETA discussions. What means it means that we would have to treat, although it may not be that much of a problem now, if there is any future large developments, we may have to treat Europeans as though they were equal to our own Prince Rupert services. So that's one. It's similar to the TILMA, those people who remember that agreement only. It's with Europe. And then the second one is, and I don't think staff has to do anything for that one, Your Worship, but the second resolution that I'd like to put forward is regarding the local government auditor bill. Our MLA, Gary Kuhn, sent us some information on the local government auditor bill, and I think that, maybe we should have a discussion, and I propose that we take a position that says that the local government auditor bill is not necessary, superfluous, and just takes money out of the municipal budgets that we could better use in our infrastructure. So I just wanted to let people know that I intend to put those two resolutions forward, and I'm not sure if the information that Mr. Coons has provided is enough, or if Mr. Howie, after looking at that information, thinks that we need some more, then maybe staff could provide that.
Okay, would you submit that information? When would you be able to do that?
I can do it at the end of this meeting.
Okay, if you would, so we'll get it and we'll have it on the agenda for February the 27th. And if there's some additional information required for consideration, I'll give staff time to get that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Rice, I think, had her hand up first, and then Councillor Garon.
I also wanted to just mention that the joint review panel for the Enbridge Northern Gateway Pipelines and Supertanker project will be in Prince Rupert on Friday and Saturday, and this will be the first hearings where they actually hear oral evidence from interveners. So those people that have actually applied and been granted intervener status and the ability to present evidence orally will be speaking, and then that this will be held at the convention center below Chance's Casino. And then later on in the year, in the spring, April or May, they'll be revisiting Prince Rupert again, and this will be the chance for people that have registered to make an oral presentation. So not evidence. This is where anecdotal or opinions can be stated. And there's quite a few people from Prince Rupert and the surrounding First Nations communities that have registered to do so. So that opportunity will be provided later on in the spring. And I wanted to mention that this process that's commencing on Friday is a public process, so everyone from the community is welcome to attend and listen and watch the evidence that's being presented. And since this is such a project of significance, that I encourage the community to go out and attend and learn as much as they can. And I was also meeting with Metlakatla First Nations today, and they wanted me to pass along the request that they would like us to go, and because they are presenting 3 hours worth of evidence, that they would encourage us to go and attend and show their support, because the project has significant adverse effects to their community. And so I said I would pass along that message.
If I could ask, just for information,
sure.
They're presenting, is this to do in light of the Scallop project? Do you know?
Well, they have 3 hours, and they are presenting quite a bit of information. So about traditional knowledge, oral history, how the project affects their title and rights, their ability to harvest marine resources, how it impacts their future plans and marine use planning and land use planning that they have done. So it's actually quite extensive, and I don't know what else that they're planning on presenting.
Well, thank you. Councillor Garon.
Thank you, Your Worship. In our January 25th info package, there was a letter from BC Transit about our Senior Regional Transit Manager, Todd Dupuis, would be pleased to make this presentation to you. Has anybody made arrangements for him to come and present
No, not
to
at
us?
all. I was waiting for action by council. If council deemed they
I would like to hear more about this. We've met with them numerous times, and they were supposed to reconfigure our routes or come up with new plans in the past, and I would like to know what's happening with that.
So you'd like an inquiry made about routes?
Yeah, well, apparently it says he's got a presentation to make, so...
So you'd like him to come and make a presentation? Would you like to make that a motion, please?
I will. Yeah.
Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Garon, seconded by Councillor Ashley, that BC Transit representative be invited to make a presentation to the City of Prince Rupert, and to also find out what's happening with local routing. That's changes have been requested. Is there any discussion? Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. That motion passes. Thank you. Anything else? Everybody's done. Okay, I'll give the mayor's report. I met with representatives of the International Association of Bridge, Structural, Ornamentation and Reinforcing Iron Workers who are interested in fostering employment and educational opportunities locally within their trade. I participated in a workshop hosted by Community Futures Pacific Northwest concerning community economic development within our region for Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal communities. I attended the Prince Rupert Airport Authority Board of Directors meeting for the month of January 2012. Councillor Garon was also in attendance, and the Prince Rupert Airport reported a 5.23% increase in passenger traffic for the 2011 year over 2010 for a total of 57,347 passengers. I participated in a meeting at the Adult Probation Office and provided some information and suggestions as a resource. I participated in an advisory meeting with representatives of the District of Port Edward involving the Northern Development Initiative Trust and possible opportunities through some of the NDI financial programs. I provided a greeting on behalf of City Council at the annual French-Canadian Cuisine Luncheon held by the Association of Francophones during their Sugar Shack Festival. I provided a greeting at the Prince Rupert Chinese Association annual New Year's celebration, wishing visitors and residents all the best during the Year of the Dragon. I attended a Prince Rupert Airport Authority meeting with a Hawk Air representative to discuss air services to communities within our region. Councillor Garon was also in attendance. I attended a Discovery to Trades program graduation for local area participants. The trades program was 10 weeks long and offered training that provided exposure to various aspects of the trades and related fields and skills upgrading and safety knowledge as a stepping stone to future labor force integration, employment opportunities, career choices, and apprenticeships. The program was facilitated with the assistance of local businesses such as Broadwater Welding and Prince Rupert Grain. I attended the Hartley Bay gathering held in Prince Rupert and provided a greeting to the city on behalf of the City Council and citizens of Prince Rupert. That is, provided a greeting on behalf of the city, its residents, and of course to the participants. I attended the grand opening of the Prince Rupert Seafarers Mission at 245 3rd Avenue West, which is operating to provide activities for sailors from foreign-going vessels visiting the port and the city. The Seafarers Mission is operated by volunteers. It involves the Christian churches of Prince Rupert and is sponsored by the Prince Rupert Port Authority and other entities. I attended the Prince Rupert Seniors Center Pancake Breakfast, which is held the first Sunday of each month during the autumn, winter, and spring. And the event is hosted by volunteers and is also a fundraiser for the seniors' activities. I attended the opening ceremonies for the 53rd Annual All-Native Basketball Tournament and provided a greeting on behalf of Prince Rupert residents and City Council. I conducted a tour of City Hall Council chambers and held a mock council meeting for the Grade 3 school students from the Annunciation School. and I participated in a second economic development forum held by Community Futures Pacific Northwest concerning priorities, challenges, and assets for community economic development. And I met with a port delegation from Nova Scotia interested in port governance and operations and the impact on the community. And this is in consideration of a port development in Guysborough County on Cape Breton Island. Councillor Garon was also in attendance. That concludes my report. If there's nothing further, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Ashley, seconded by Councillor Carlick-Pearson. Question's been called. Those in favor? Thank you. This meeting stands adjourned.